I used to sleep soundly at night. I used to come home after a hard day, shower, and snuggle up in the blankets. With the buffeting of a box fan and the hum of an air conditioner, I would lull to sleep each night, fading out of consciousness until my alarms woke me the next day. I didn't stress about sounds in the night. I didn't toss and turn at the unexpected wind and rain, or the flash of lightning in a thunderstorm. No matter how trying my day was, no matter how long the hours, I would find sleep quickly and eagerly, ready to face the challenge of the next day. That was, until 2 days ago. 2 nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I locked my door, wondering if everyone did. Even if I did, would it matter? Every time I close my eyes, I think it'll be standing in the doorway of my bedroom. I swear I can hear its breathing, labored and heavy with mucus. I feel the heat of its snarl on my neck, and I hear the drag of its claws on the bed sheets. When I open my eyes, there's nothing there. I know it's there, waiting. My name is Leslie Reagan, and I'm a police officer in the town of Dyer Falls. What I saw 2 days ago will forever haunt me, as long as I live. Dyer Falls used to be a quiet, small town. I thought for a while that the town was perhaps too quiet, although that is every cop's dream. But nothing ever seemed to really happen in my town, save for the occasional speeding ticket or fender bender. Being a cop in this town almost felt like a redundancy, the highlight of the week consisting of cattle getting out, or someone having a little too much on a night out. After academy training and staying in shape and studying to effectively do my job, it all kind of felt like it was for nothing. Until that girl went missing, and was ultimately found dead in the river. It was a catastrophic event in a town where the only deceased are from age. Even though the car salesman case was solved, almost open and shut, something seemed to change in town after that. Like something had torn in the fabric of our close-knit reality. People kept more to themselves, and the warm welcome of our town was replaced by an eerie chill we couldn't shake. The girl in the river was only the beginning. The struck match to light a kindling paranoia that would only grow in the following year. Once the gloom had settled in, it never left. Like it was there to stay. Whenever it would get quiet again, there would be something disturbing around the corner. Something else to headline the paper to remind us that normalcy wasn't coming back. A man burned up in his car, along with a murdered cat. Unexplained sightings all over town, from the woods at night to busy places in broad daylight. Mysterious lights in the woods. Overdoses on deadly drugs. Ones that were not only untraceable, but untestable. Reports of something lurking close by. The calls became so frequent, even reports of internet ghosts didn't seem that far off. People began to disappear, without rhyme or reason. Some left photographs behind. Others left their cars on the side of the road, the engine still running. Each case runs cold just as soon as it happens. While these things seem unrelated, when you lay the reports out, you can't help but feel like someone is punishing this town. The calls of unexplained sightings keep coming. The missing persons flyers are piling up. Our police force is small and we're spreading incredibly thin. We're all trying to do our part and assure the community that they're safe. Every shift we look up at the sky and we can feel the dark cloud. How can they believe what we tell them when we don't believe it ourselves? At the start of every morning or late night shift, we wait for the call, for the case that will break us. 2 days ago, I received my call. I'm telling you the story because I hope, no, I need someone to believe me. A vague report of trespassing in the middle of the day around 5 p.m. Some kids playing around on private property. It was something that happened all the time. Teenagers looking for a secret place to drink, smoke, or fool around. The only strange thing was the location I was called to. I had never been to before. It was on a long stretch on County Line Road, a long, wooded portion that was nothing but trees and overgrowth as far as I knew. There was no road marker. I arrived on the scene, pulling my car into a barely visible gravel drive in the tree line. The path was blocked by posts and a heavy chain, a simple yet effective barrier that kept my cruiser from going forward. I radioed that I had arrived and would have to proceed on foot. 10-4, dispatch responded, the chirp of my radio echoing. I stepped out of the vehicle and traversed the chain, keeping my eyes ahead of me. The path led to a small clearing and what appeared to be an abandoned barn. If I was lucky, it was just kids sneaking off for some cigarettes. But it boggled me how they had gotten in the middle of nowhere without a car. There wasn't anyone in sight. Nothing but tall, swaying grass and derelict barn that seemed to be standing solely out of spite. It was apparent whoever owned this property didn't take care of it, and it looked like no one had set foot anywhere near here in a long time. From a distance, the barn looked ready to collapse at any moment. Not only did it look like it didn't belong, the faded gray paint of the outside and the weathered shingles almost seemed rejected by the thriving green grass around it. I worked my way slowly towards the clearing, keeping an eye for the suspected teenagers as I approached. I couldn't smell weed or cigarette smoke, and the closer I got, the more I thought it was just a false alarm. The tall grass surrounding the barn blew freely, and I couldn't find any depressions in the grass wherever I looked. I kept looking at the barn in the clearing, the long, faded, and peeling structure standing like a sore in the middle of its lush surroundings. Just seeing it made me uncomfortable. It looked just like the kind of kill house you'd see in a Hollywood cinema. I checked the perimeter around the barn, the cool breeze picking up as I walked around it. The building itself seemed to radiate cold, and the air around it felt electrical. Something about it felt wrong. The only thing I could hear was the whistle of wind through the cracks of wood. I pressed my face to the wall and peeked in. Old farming tools hung within, each covered in the heavy rust of neglect. Through the haze of dust particles and shadow, I saw a cellar door. Something nudged my foot and I jumped. I looked down and saw a cat, sitting silently at my feet. Its eyes were green and piercing, its fur a distortion of white, black, and orange. It looked up at me and meowed, the wind rustling its fur. "What are you doing out here, little guy?" I asked and reached down to pet it. It didn't look pleased to see me here, and it didn't make any effort to greet me. Around its neck was a collar, with a little silver trinket that read, "Cooper." I reached for it, but he backed away. He looked in the direction of my car and looked back at me. Another meow, this time much slower. His eyes bore into me with an intensity that I can't explain, like there was fire burning in them. The air started to feel chilly, and I felt myself shiver. The cat looked back towards my car again, a guttural groan seething from the tips of exposed fangs. The wind picked up, and with it, the stench of death. It wasn't until my eyes noticed something in the thick of trees behind him. A slow realization of details coming together. It looked just like red at first, but as I focused on it, I started to see the limbs, and their lack of skin. It was a pile of body parts, torsos and limbs stacked like a bonfire. In front of me, the cat started to hiss. It reared back, teeth bared as its fur stood on end. I reached for my gun and felt the sickening realization that he wasn't looking at me. He was looking behind me. I heard a single footstep followed by a grunt. Before I could draw, something knocked me in the back of my head and my world turned black. I wake to the stench of dirt in my nostrils. My entire right side aches and I feel like I've been tossed off a cliff. Aftershocks of an unconscious impact rattle deep into my bones, and a delirious panic begins to kindle. I struggle to open my eyes, and my officer instincts fight to ignite. My body tries to obey, each attempt like a failed generator cold start. The gears want to turn, but there's a miscommunication. It's dark, and I'm punished when I open my eyes. All I can see is the absence of light. I try to sit up, my limbs reluctant to obey. The ground feels damp and uneven as I try to push off of it. My head is heavy, and moving it provokes more pain. After several attempts, the best I can manage is sitting. The weight of gravity is nauseating. In the darkness, I spin, trying to recollect something other than this. I reach behind my head and feel the dried stickiness of blood. Feeling the consistency on my fingertips brings static to my mind, and I find myself vomiting. My head lolls as I toss it to the side, and my ears are assaulted with the sounds of splashing bile. In the hangover of retching, I have a moment of clarity, and recall the aching stiffness around my wrist. My belt. The flashlight. The gun. I feel the cylindrical shape on my hip, and draw the flashlight. There's something loose jingling around inside. I press the button, and the flashlight produces a flickering, fading beam. The light hurts, but I command myself to take in what I see in jarring, erratic bursts. I'm in what looks like a dugout tunnel. To my left is an old metal ladder, and I follow it up to the ceiling. The shaft to the exit goes up at least 20 feet. 3 details stand out miserably, erasing any hope the flashlight seemed to bring. Halfway up the shaft, the ladder is mangled horribly. Twisted steel that would be impossible to climb. Hanging from the top portion of the ladder is my radio, out of reach. The top of the ladder passage is blocked off by what looks like a wooden door. My conclusion is that I was tossed down here, and it's a miracle I didn't break my neck in the fall or gore myself on the broken ladder. The flashlight is dying, and I abandon what's above to see what's ahead. I swing the flashlight to my right and only get a second. What I see is burned into my mind even after the light dies. The dugout tunnel continues in a straight corridor, but ahead the dirt is covered in mutilated body parts. I smack the flashlight in desperation and get nothing except the haunting reminder of what lies ahead. My only hope for escape is further in. My legs shake as I climb to my feet, my aching body protesting every movement. My steps are hesitant at first, my knees wobbling under the weight of my ailments. Albeit blindly, I navigate the walls of gore. Bones and pulp crunch under my boots as I feel the way forward, and every noise makes me sink further inside myself. Despite the growing chill, the stench of hot roadkill still remains. I don't know how I got here or why I trudge forward. I try to use my phone as light, but I can't get it to respond to my finger. The apps open and close rapidly on their own, and the flashlight doesn't work. The signal bars jump from 1 to 4, each lighting individually. I try to reset it, but when I hold the power button, it fails to turn back on. In my hand is the shaking weight of the Glock 22, feeling heavy and worthless in the dark. I can't even recall when I pulled it from its holster. I point it ahead of me as I walk, my finger twitching on the trigger. My eyes adjust to the darkness, although I plead them not to. Gaining insight of my surroundings only leads to a further delve into the insanity. Empty sockets, sinewy jawbones. My mind tries to piece it together, the reason for the plastered butchery, but produces no answers. Ahead, a tune softly plays, a murmur of direction beyond the meat. In the end, I followed it. Not because I want to, but for lack of an alternative. The path behind holds the same darkness as in front of me. I try not to think of the textures my boot soles communicate, but my thoughts refuse the coddling. I feel them poking through the spongy mass I trudge. I think they're marbles or Legos, but I know they're teeth. The thought makes me stumble and I slip, my hands grabbing desperately for something to save me. My fingers hook into a rod-like structure and my face is stopped inches from the mess that is on the floor. My grasp starts to slip and I correct myself. When I withdraw my hand, a substance follows, stringy and warm. A rib cage. I try to scream and my gut wishes violently to vomit. The end result is the perpetual half-suck of a breath, an open-mouthed gasping that continues even after I'm moving again. The longer I walk, the more I learn of my surroundings. It's not a hallway or a corridor, but a tunnel. Something that had been carved out of the earth before getting redecorated with human remains. I think I'm descending. The putrid cool of the passage is growing colder. My breath disperses into fog and I start to shiver. There's a fork in the tunnel. The left leads to more darkness, and to the right is light. I struggle to make sense of it, the little glimmer outline of a rectangle. It's a door, framed impossibly into the walls of the cave. The sight doesn't give me hope. Just a foreboding drone the longer I look at it, like it's trying to signal or tell me something. Like I'm going to die. I approach the door. The tune is louder. An old song scratching on a record player. I can hear a loud thwacking coming from within, like a blade burying in a block. I think I know what I'll find. My hands find its way to the knob anyway. When I open the door, the first thing I see is the large figure standing in the center of the room. Its body is broad. Bulging muscles donning an apron glisten from a dingy overhead lamp. The music drones as he works, a tired record spinning on an ancient player in the corner. Sharp, wicked tools hang from the walls, each stained with evidence of heavy use. Hand crank augers, scythes and hammers. The butchered bodies of dozens litter the room, coagulating streams trickling to a large floor drain. I watch the large blade cleave flesh, separating an arm from its shoulder. From what's left of it, I can see it's a woman, and recently deceased. Steam rising from the freshly pooled blood. Piercing eyes from behind what I think is a pig looks down and admires its work, one of its beefy hands playing in the arterial spray. Its tongue laps like a panting dog, the curve of its smile unnatural and grotesque. Its twisting snout sniffs the air, catching a scent that makes it look up at me. Behind the pigman, the music stops. He looks up at me and cocks his head, moving like an animated nightmare. Its smile widens, and one of his pointed ears twitches. I want to hide, but it's too late. I want to run, but there's nowhere to go. I want to scream, but I can only watch. Watch as it squeals. Academy training specifies 2 shots center mass. I give him 4. The gun barks in my hands, my grip slipping against the gore on my fingers. The rounds punch through his gut. 40 caliber Smith & Wesson hollow points, ripping through the surface only to be halted, like his insides were solid. The bullets only seemed to agitate him. He groans loudly and grabs the body on the table by its throat. He squeezes it angrily, a hand the size of my head closing around the windpipe until the dead woman's eyes bleed. He hefts the mutilated body over his head, and with a loud squeal, he throws it at me. As the corpse rockets toward me, I slam the door, and as the body crashes into it, I can hear him flipping the table out of his way. A second later, the large cleaver bursts through the door, sending splinters as it chops through effortlessly. I raise the gun and retaliate, firing rounds through the wood to slow him down. He shrieks as I shoot him, swinging wildly before retracting his arm. His other one comes next, punching another hole through, this time with a meat hook. It nearly grazes my face, the door crumbling as he reaches as far as he can. The door barely holds him off, and I light him up again, peppering him until the gun runs dry. Even as a bullet digs a trench through one of his eyes, he does not stop. I turn to run, ejecting the mag and replacing it as he breaks through the door. Despite the many wounds, the pigman does not seem to be slowing down. Fear bleeds into my adrenaline as I hear him squeal, an unnatural cry that seems more excited as he gives chase. I'm faster at first, but his heavy footsteps crush through the floor's gore as I slip. My hands shake as I rack the slide on the Glock. I take off opposite of the butchering room, into more tunneling I can barely see through. My eyes adjust to the dark, but not enough to see every jagged bone, every strip of slippery meat. I hear his footsteps gaining, and I turn to fire. The muzzle flashes illuminate the horror he is, and I watch him approach with every consecutive gunshot. Even as the rounds smack into his chest, he raises the cleaver, so high it drags on the ceiling. With a grunt, he brings the blade down, and I feel the wind from the swing as I throw myself against the wall. The cleaver buries into the floor, kicking up a spray of gore and dirt. I raise the gun and point it at his face. The pigman reaches out and grabs the gun, his thick fingers immediately engulfing both the firearm and my hands. I pull the trigger and miss, catching a glimpse of his grin as he lifts me off the ground, my fingers threatening to break. He lets go and slams me into the wall with his head, his skull acting as a battering ram that knocks the wind out of me and crushes my chest. I fall to the ground, losing my grip on the gun and slipping in the gore beneath us. My gasp for air is met with a colossal boot on my stomach. His squeal is loud and echoes through the tunnel as he watches me struggle. He leaves the cleaver in the ground and holds up the meat hook, running his long tongue over the bend in the steel. I try to crawl away, pawing the dark gore in search of the handgun. My fingers graze a human skull, a severed foot, other fingers. I try to get away, but his beefy hand grabs the back of my neck and yanks me upward. Through gasping breath, I kick and try to scream, trying to do anything in my power to avoid the meat hook. The pigman lets me struggle, a barely human chuckle chattering his crooked teeth. His breath is rancid, a metallic stench of death and decay. I see my end coming, in the form of the sticky hook he drags across my face, as he savors what comes next. As he toys with me, I desperately feel my belt for something, anything to help me. Empty holsters, handcuffs, taser, mace. Mace. As the pigman stares at me with its remaining eye, I raise the can of mace and empty it into his fucking eyeball. The pigman howls against the pepper spray, jerking his face side to side to avoid the mist as I hold the button down. I cough and hack against the spray, my ears tearing as I exhaust the can. When it's spent, I shove the empty can in his eye, lodging it into the fissure left behind by the bullet. The squeals are broken, almost robotic. The pigman swings wildly and lets me go, the hook catching and ripping the meat plastered to the walls as he tries to dislodge the can. I stumble to my feet and run, drawing the taser as I try to get away. I know he won't be slowed for long. The tunnel moves in a blur around me as I run, my breath slowly returning. Another fork. I go left. I want to wipe my eyes from the spray residue, but my hands are covered in blood. Behind me, the pigman squeals angrily. Another fork. Right. There's no logic to my direction, only a further descent into the underground madness. I squeeze the taser so hard it hurts. Beneath my feet, I start to feel traction. Squinting against the dark, I see the gore is thinning, giving way to metal. The squeals behind get further away, angrier the longer he can't find me. The smell of roadkill fades, replaced by oil and grease. My boots meet a solid surface, and I'm able to run without worry of slipping. Just as the squeals become a whisper, the tunnel opens up, wider and wider until I find myself in a vast open space. Machines and metal scrap litter the floor in piles, cracks of light coming from above. "Help! Help me!" I scream, afraid to stop for too long. My voice reverberates endlessly. I look around the massive room, my surroundings starting to make sense. It's like a factory, but tainted. I look for an exit, but it's so dark. Everything blanketed by the shadows of the machinery. I want to hide, but I don't know where he won't find me. I find myself looking aimlessly, the taser pointed in front of me. I hear the throw of a switch, and the room explodes with light. The orange glow floods from above, and the machines around me roar to life. I see the pigman against the wall, throwing one lever after another, each adding more deafening noise. Gears turn, pistons engage, and hydraulic lines jerk with the flow of fluid. Geysers of steam shoot from crags in the machines. I look around at the spinning blades, flattening rolls, and grinders. Each is caked with the remnants of human flesh. Shredders chew at gnarled bones, and rotting limbs are blended into paste. Beneath my feet, the diamond plate floor is stained with the fluids of 1,000 victims. In the noise and flashing lights stands the pigman, his eyes bloodshot and irritated. His mouth is frothing. His face is bleeding. Despite his condition, his smile curls, and I see a bulky circular saw in his grip. With a loud squeal, he pulls the ripcord, and the saw roars to life with the other machines. Instead of rushing towards me, he slinks away. I hear him rev the saw, but with the barrage of noise, I can't hear from where. Trembling, I duck into the machinery as well, crouching under a table of spinning conveyor rolls. I crawl quickly to the other side, weaving in between machines that seem impossibly built in this hellscape. Concrete is fused with steel in a way that doesn't make sense. Pipes jut from the floor randomly, welded together almost artistically. Like everything is patched together from someone's imagination. Somewhere the saw revs, and I duck into the workings of another machine to hide. I crawl around beams and weave past rubber hoses, occasionally looking behind me to make sure he isn't following. Shadows dance from the lights above, a disorienting pattern that makes me dizzy. My chest and stomach hurt, and the smog billowing in the room makes me want to gag. I look frantically for some form of safety, but behind every metal cranny is just an extension of the same industrial nightmare. The beams started getting closer together, forcing me to crawl ahead in a narrow path. I no longer had room to turn around, and suddenly I felt a twinge of claustrophobia curling around me. Behind me, the saw screams. I look back to see the pigman, the angry eye staring as he ducks into the small passage. The circular saw arcs off the ground, sparks flying off the floor as he tries to duck under after me. I panic and crawl faster, a primal fear spreading as I think of the saw tearing through my flesh. The pigman squealed, the saw getting closer as I drag myself along. My elbows knock against the floor and I bump my head off the low ceiling, the passage slowly feeling like a funneling prison. The walls get tighter and the light starts to fade, and before I know it, I meet a dead end, a cold wall suddenly cutting me off. No. I look behind me to see the pigman was only 15 feet away, baring his teeth as he drew closer. I pounded against the wall in desperation and felt it give. The passage was cut off by a large toolbox. The wheels are rusted and locked in place. "Move, damn you!" I shout, pushing the box as hard as I could. It budges slowly, wheels squeaking in spite. I hear him getting closer, but I don't dare to look back. I try to shove it again, this time throwing my shoulder into it with everything I have. The wheels break free, only to catch an inch later. The box tips over, tools spilling in a loud crash as the drawers empty all over the floor. I hurry over it just as I feel the vibration of the saw eating at the floor behind me. I roll over it painfully, sockets and wrenches skittering around as I crawl to my feet. I feel a rush of relief as I get out of there, only for my stomach to sink like quicksand. The area ahead was just a 20 by 20 open square, completely cut off by concrete walls. Chains with hooked ends hung from the ceiling, inches above my head. I had backed myself into a corner. There was nowhere else to go. I turned to see the Pigman emerge from the passage, his bulky frame squeezing out awkwardly. He's holding the saw lazily, the same excited smile. This was the end of the line, and he knew it. The only way out is back through him. I look at the floor to the scattered tools spilled from the tool chest. I holster the taser and pick up the biggest thing I could find, a large, open-ended wrench the length of my arm. "Fuck you," I shout, hefting the wrench in both hands. "You want it so bad? Come and get it, you fucking pig." The Pigman pauses for a second and lowers the saw. He tilts his head curiously. "Come on," I yell, ready to swing. His smile widens, and he looks away from me, to the blinking button on the wall beside him. He lifts a meaty finger and presses it. The floor beneath me rumbles, and a glaring red spotlight shines from above. Between my feet, the floor started to separate, and an ear-splitting roar erupted from below. Beneath me is a pit, and at the bottom, the biggest shredder I have ever seen. The floor disappears, and the pig laughs. I drop the wrench and grab onto the chains above, holding on for dear life as the toolbox falls below. The teeth chew at the toolbox, hammers and screwdrivers bending under the immense force of the shredder. It struggles at the momentary clog, only to speed up and clear itself like a garbage disposal. I scream as I flail in the air, and the Pigman revs his saw once more, swinging wildly to knock me down. Sparks fly and the chains ripple, the spinning blade of the saw only inches away. I sway on the chain, kicking away every time he swings. I grab onto another, but every time I move, I dangle further out of control. My grip is slipping, and he will reach me eventually. I have to make a choice. The saw or the shredder. I look below to the spinning teeth and wonder if I would even feel it. The Pigman swings again, this time aiming for the chains above me. One of the chains is ripped from my hand and I almost fall. He revs it up again and opens his mouth, a savage scream rippling from it. Dangling from one hand, I draw the taser and fire. The electrodes shoot across the pit, crackling barbs sticking into the back of his throat. The Pigman seizes uncontrollably, contorting hands, dropping the saw to the depths below. He bites down on the wires, drool flying as the current shocks him over and over. I yank the tether and he loses his balance, his feet twitching as he tries to stay on the platform. Through the shock, he reaches for me, his remaining eye glaring angrily, even as I chuck the taser into the pit. The shredder sucks in the wires and yanks the Pigman with it. I watch him tumble after, stumbling through the air until he fed the gears himself, shoulder first. They eat at him greedily, the motors struggling as they chew at his body, skin and muscle torn away with bloody bites, the shredder burning up as it reveals what lays beneath. Under the hide of the Pigman is a skeleton of nuts and bolts, pistons and cogs. The shredder eats away at him slowly, sucking in his feet and hands, grinding away at his snout. The pigman stares up at me as it consumes him, a look of burning hatred from below, even after the floor begins to return and seal off the pit. The shutters close and I return my feet to the floor, legs shaking from the thought of what remains in the pit beneath it. I duck back into the passage I came from, the machines groaning and winding down. When I return to the entrance of the tainted factory, there's an explosion, like a bomb going off. The walls shake and the floor quakes, and from the dark depths of the factory comes an ear-piercing scream. The squeal of 1,000 angry pigs. The back of the room erupts, a detonation of blood and steel from the shredder pit. The machines peel apart and vacuum to the epicenter of the sound, scrap and bloody bone coming together in a jigsaw puzzle of metal viscera. The squeals get louder as the mass grows, an enormous snout and pointed ears taking shape in a sanguinary replica. The head turned toward me, and a jagged grin peels through the wreckage. A long arm made of jagged metal reaches towards me, the fingertips consisting of various spinning drill bits. I run back into the tunnel, the pig's song booming behind me. The sound of slithering steel grinds throughout the factory, and I hear something converging on me from multiple directions. I push on, tired legs traversing the steel floor that slowly recedes back into sticky gore. The tunnel forks and I weave blindly, the angry metallic cry following wherever I go. Left, right, left, straight. My legs burn, my feet slip. I feel the darkness rapidly approaching, a squelching slither along with a single thumping drag. I hear the pig consume the tunnel behind me, filling the void like a tidal wave of blood and machine. I take another left and the tunnel keeps going, a deeper descent into an endless stretch of plastered guts and darkness. I keep running, keep pushing, but I can no longer see where I go. I run until all I have left is the slithering behind me and the sounds of my own tired, squishing steps, like I'm running in place. A bright white light shining like heaven. The beam cuts through the darkness and starts to strobe, slowly rounding the corner into an unseen fork in the darkness. A corridor I would have passed blindly otherwise. I bound toward it and turned sharply, my boots sliding as I clumsily right myself. The light continues to flash and I follow, mustering every ounce of energy I have left as I pursue it. My legs start to burn and I realize I'm climbing an incline, the slippery texture fading away to clammy dirt the higher I climb. The light waits for me at the top of the hill, and behind it, I can see what looks like an exit, an end to the tunnel. Behind me, the squeal shatters the air, an angry cry of malevolence that seems to worsen the closer it gets. It nips at my heels with its drilling fingers, but I keep my eyes forward, focusing on the light ahead and the widening exit behind it. The ground rumbles and the walls start to cave in, the weight of my pursuer trembling the earth as it gets closer. The squeals rattle my ears, but I keep going, my legs shaking as I fight to climb my way out. The tunnel is collapsing. Ahead, the light flickers, and in its wake stands a cat. The sight of him brings back an epiphany of memories, a trespass call to a derelict barn, and a dark cellar within. A calico cat named Cooper. When I catch up, the cat runs alongside me, looking back curiously before diving through a hole overgrown by weeds. I break through shortly after, tumbling to a stop in the overgrowth, exhausted and defeated. The last thing I see in the tunnels is the face of the pigman, skin stretched over a frame so large it takes up the entirety of the passage. One long claw reaching for me, pointed augers of metal and bone. The ceiling collapses and the squeals fade away, like I'm waking from a bad dream. I lean back against a tree, staring at the knoll I just came out from. With the entrance collapsed, it looks like it was never even there. My blood-stained uniform and the agony in my body assures me otherwise. Above, the sun is setting. I hear a soft purr and see Cooper sitting next to me, his piercing eyes reflecting the haze of the sunset. I sit there for a moment and stroke his fur, something he seems to momentarily allow. He doesn't lean into my pets, he doesn't look away from the sun. The only thing he manages is the same low purring. When I catch my breath, I dig my phone from the mess that is my pants pocket. Not only am I surprised when it lights up, it's acting normally and I actually have service. I hear something in the distance and look up just in time to see a car pass. Not 20 feet from me is the highway. Although where in town, I'm not sure. I climb to my feet and dial the number for the station, holding the phone to my ear as I head towards the road. When they answer, I start to explain myself in exhausted, broken sentences. I look back at the trees, and Cooper is gone. I'm telling you this story simply because nobody believes me. My fellow officers give their support and have been there for me since, but I can see the doubt in their eyes when I speak up. You see, we went back to the derelict barn on County Line Road. We found my car where I left it, parked in a little patch of grass on the shoulder. Everything is there as I left it. No signs of tampering. No evidence of theft. But there's no road leading to the property. No chained-off drive. There is no abandoned property. No derelict barn. No signs of recent activity or presence in the slightest. Just an undisturbed forest that goes on for miles. I even led them back to where they found me on the side of the road. There's no caved-in tunnel. No mysterious cat. No signs of me even being there aside from my bruises and ruined uniform. No pigman. No nothing. They've given me time off to collect myself before coming back to the station and making a proper statement. I also have to undergo a mental evaluation to ensure I'm fit to return to duty. I suppose I should be thankful. Thankful to be alive. Thankful that I made it out. But every night, I'm left lying awake. I think of that pig and the things I saw down there. I think of how he wouldn't die and the machinery that writhes underneath his flesh. I think of all the bones I found down there. How many victims he's claimed. The ones he used to decorate the tunnels with gore. Tunnels that stretch under this entire fucking town. I lay in bed at night and I can hear him squeal. I close the windows and lock the doors, but I know he's still there. I know he won't stop. I'm telling you this just in case nobody ever hears from me again. I will go looking for him. I'll find another tunnel. Someone has to. I just hope he doesn't find me first. Today's video was supported by patrons like Mark from Earth, Crimson Muse, Joy Burton, Diane Showers, Mark Zawal, Cheryl James, Pick Your Sticker, Teddy Dog, Clue 404, Mamakato, Dante Kincaid, Zarin Ray, Angela Donovan, Blarian50, Devin Kyle, Timothy Baird, Ajeti, Bert Turner, Bajani Espinal, Michael Pierce, Big Joe, Gary Harkonnen, LaDonna Spivey, Scott Tanaka, Tom Stewart, Sherman Davis, Bryce Shelton, Susan McClendon, Elise Batiste, Lisa and the Cult Jam, Open Circuit, Fabulivore, Raymond Jaggers, That Darn Fox, Raison Detra, Kai Gaming 99, Windy Burns, The Windigo, Michael Squishy Park, The Gemstar, Vault 77 Citizen, Puppy Dan, Clovis Wolf, Eldridge Elm, Derek Prey, Elder Being, KC Hawaii, Rob T, Tragic Mermaid, Darren Fishnaller, Cloves Anoia Harris, Roe Underwood, Florida Man Luke, Bethany's Mom, Winter's Kiss, Sam Brook, The White Stag, Corgi Connection, No Name, Marta Cara, Professor Elm, Kathy Barrickman, Cybard Sands, Steve Hennessy, Melanie Sanders, and The Archivist. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you have access to bonus videos and content, as well as a Discord channel. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in an upcoming Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow, and see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.